Hello, good people of Dunfermline West Baptist. My name is Stuart Lee. I work for Tearfund Scotland. Just thank you so much for virtually welcoming me today to talk a little bit about our work with Tearfund. Tearfund, if you don't know, is a international relief and development organisation. Our motto is following Jesus, where the need is greatest. We are focused on places in the world of where people are experiencing extreme poverty, and really we're dedicated to helping them lift themselves out of poverty. And we work alongside the church. We work alongside churches in the UK, for example, to give and to support the work, and then churches across the world in actually delivering aid, for example, and development projects. So that's Tearfund, and I work with churches in Scotland. That's my role. But I just want to share a little bit of a story of something that I came across recently with Tearfund, and then to spend a little bit of time looking at Scripture in Genesis and the story of Hagar. But just this February, I was out in Ethiopia, which is great because we've not really been out and about much lately. But in February, I was able to even cross an ocean and get out to Ethiopia. And I was there with a small team from Scotland, and we went up to a region called Afar, where Tearfund have recently started working. And Tearfund are there in Afar, Ethiopia, because the communities there are really struggling, are really suffering because of the impacts of climate change. And climate change for this region, and for many places in the world, looks like water running out, literally. People are seeing riverbeds dry out, sources of water, ponds, lakes even dry out, and they're having a really difficult time surviving. So we were in a village where we met a lady called Orbesa, and we met her family, and when we met her, she had just arrived back from a long walk to get water, to fetch water. And we sat with her and we asked her some questions, and we heard a little bit more about her story. And we asked, you're just back from getting water. How long did that take? And where did you go? And she says, well, the only place we can get water just now is a 5-hour walk away. And because, we have to carry the water that we get, it's 5 hours there and 5 hours back. And we still can only gather less than half of the water, the basic water supply that we need. And so we constantly don't have enough water. More than that, this 10-hour journey that she talked about, she does that every day. She does that every day without a day off. Because if she doesn't, she doesn't have enough water to give her children something to drink. And even still, she talked about we asked what's the hardest thing about life here, and she talked about her children going to bed thirsty and asking for water, and how she has to persuade them that if they can only wait until tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow they can have some water, but there's none left today. There's none left tonight. And that was heartbreaking to hear. And we said, well, what was it like before? Go back a few years, what was it like? And she says, I can show you. Walk with me for 5 minutes and I'll show you the river where we used to get water. And every year we expect the rains to come, we expect the river to be back, and it's not coming back. And I asked her, or my colleague asked her, do you know why this is happening? Just to kind of see, have you got any understanding of the impacts of climate change and everything? And she says, only God knows why this is happening. and maybe next year the rains will come back. So it was really heartbreaking to be in places like that and to hear her story. And it reminded me of the story of Hagar. So I want to turn to Genesis in chapter 21 and just to read a little bit, a snapshot from Hagar's story. Starting in verse 14, it says, so Abraham rose early in the morning. What happened previously is that Abraham's wife Sarah really doesn't want Hagar around, and Abraham has to send Hagar away. It says, Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, Hagar's son, Ishmael, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot, for she said, let me not look on the death of my child. And she sat opposite him. She lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up your boy, and hold him fast with your hand, and I will make him into a great nation. So here was Hagar sent off into the wilderness with just a little bit of water and with her son. And she ends up in a situation, a desperate situation, where her options have run out, her water has run out, she has nowhere to get help, and she's at a point where she just has to put her son as far away so that she doesn't have to listen to him cry as they die. Her options have run out. And God hears. It says God hears the cry of the boy. Now, this isn't Hagar's first time in the wilderness. Only a few chapters earlier, in chapter 16 of Genesis, Hagar again for the first time, is sent out into the wilderness and is stuck. And God again intervenes and comes alongside her. An angel comes alongside her and basically encourages her that she's got a future, and her son, her son's got a future, and she replies to God in verse 13. It says, so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God of seeing. You are a God of seeing. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. You're the God who sees me, and you look after me. Hagar was stuck in the desert. God saw her, and God looked after her. And then the second time round, she was out in the desert with her son. She was in a desperate situation. Her options had run out, and God heard her suffering, and God intervened. And she was able to, her eyes were open to see a well of water. And she was able to fill up that skin of water and look after her son and live. Now, when I think about Orbisa, this lady that I met in Ethiopia, I come back to Scotland, and we don't hear about the suffering of the people of Afar in Ethiopia. It's not in the news, it's not in the media, it's not in social media. And a few years ago, I worked in South Sudan, and I spent a year out there, and I came back home, and I remember being with friends and family and saying, guys, did you hear about what happened in South Sudan? Have you heard about the civil war? Have you heard about the suffering of these people? And one by one, people were just, my friends and my family would just say, no, I heard anything about South Sudan. It's not in the news. It's not in newspapers. My point is this: so much suffering in the world goes unseen and unheard. Hagar was sent out from Abraham. She was to go away and be unseen and to suffer out of sight, out of mind. But God saw her. And I just wonder, maybe you listening to this, maybe you're going through something. Maybe you're going through a challenge in life. Maybe you're feeling like your options are running out, kind of that moment that Hagar has where she's saying, I've literally no options left. Maybe you've experienced that, or maybe you're experiencing it now. God heard her cry. God is a God who sees. God is a God who helps. When I was towards the end of our trip in Ethiopia, we visited another village, almost identical to Orbisa's village. But this one had recently been given a well. A Christian charity that Tearfund partners with had gone in and dug a well and put solar panels in, and it was a kind of well that could provide water for 50,000 households. I think it is something. It's massive. And we went in, and as soon as we stepped out of the vehicle, the atmosphere was completely different from the first village. The first village, when we were there, it was lifeless. The children I remember seeing the children sitting under a tree and not playing, not laughing, just sitting still. And there was just I remember this one boy who had a whistle. I don't know how, he had a little plastic whistle, and he was just every now and again just give a little blow of the whistle. And that was just like the only bit of fun that these kids had. But it was lifeless, and it wasn't a nice place to be. You could tell these people were really, really suffering. They were really up against it. But in the second village, with the water, there was laughter in the air. It sounds cliche, but my Ethiopian colleague turned to me as soon as we were there, and he says, where there is water, there is life. And I kid you not, there's this waterfall of a water pump, and women were filling up barrel after barrel of water and laughing and joking as they were doing that. And the water was cascading off these buckets, and in this mist, children were laughing and dancing and playing. And it was such a beautiful sight after seeing the suffering, after seeing the lifelessness beforehand, to see this incredible atmosphere just from a water source being put in. And obviously coming back to Scotland, where we are so blessed beyond belief with such ample water, so much so that we spend half our time complaining about having too much water falling from the sky. And here we are seeing just what it looks like for people to get access to abundant, local, no 10-hour walk, abundant local water. And this was an act of generosity and love from Christians that are following Jesus and hearing about this suffering that's out of sight and out of mind and doing something about it. And so that's what we're all about in Tearfund. We believe that God wants to ease these people's suffering, and we want to get involved, and we invite you, the church, to come and join us as we follow Jesus where the need is greatest. We want to see more villages like that second one. And there's stories like that from all over the world. There is incredible breakthroughs happening. I want to invite you, if you feel led, or if it's appropriate for you, there's a way that you can support us, support the work that we're doing in places like Afar. We've set up an easy way for you to do this. I'm sorry I can't give you any physical cards right now to fill in, but if you were to head to tearfund.org/give water. Give water. You can get into our site there where you can donate towards this campaign and help us in situations like Orbisa's, where we can do things like put in these water wells, etc. And you can read a little bit more, get a bit more information there. But tearfund.org/give water, if that's appropriate for you, and if not, please pray. Pray for these communities, pray for us as we're intervening. But yeah, and apart from that, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me share these things with you this morning. For me, it's evening. And yeah, bless you. I hope to be with you in person once lockdown ends in the future. I'd love to come and meet you all. But yeah, thank you very much, and God bless.